Sean actually went to bat for me, shouting the Greg Cherry for Quizlemania thing. And then several of the people on the show hashtagged it. I was like, we're getting it going.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talk Trash, and stand back for another video. This time, I'm joined by the Wrestling Trivia King, Greg Cherry. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
So if we take this back to the beginning, where do you first discover wrestling as a fan?
So the first time I really got into wrestling as a fan, I was about maybe 4 or 5 years old, and my dad wanted to start getting me into something to enjoy. So he bought me my first 2 wrestling action figures, which were both Ric Flair and Arn Anderson.
Ooh.
Which, if you're going to start somewhere with wrestling figures, 2 of the Horsemen are a good place to start. I remember watching my first pay-per-view all the way back in 1992, SummerSlam 1992. It sticks out in my mind, and it's been a long time since I've watched that show. I need to go back and watch it again. But just seeing Bret Hart and the British Bulldog do what they do, I was hooked. I couldn't go back on anything else. I was like, yep, this is going to be my personality for the rest of my life.
Fair enough. So when it comes to, you talk about it being your personality for the rest of your life, what do you think it was that you was like, this is my thing? What do you think it was?
I don't know if it was,
should I say?
I don't know if it was the athleticism of wrestling or if I was just amazed at the spectacle of it, especially with that particular SummerSlam in Wembley. I just fell in love with it, and I've been trying to watch everything. My first Royal Rumble that I watched was 1993, and I just got stuck. I tried to find as much wrestling as I possibly could, and we didn't even have cable until the mid-90s. So I didn't get to watch any Raw or like the beginning of Nitro. So all I had was like Superstars and maybe the occasional tape trading pay-per-view. And so I just tried to find as much of it as I could, and I just fell in love with it.
You talked about the only having access to certain things due to the technology. How do you think your fandom would be different if you had access to the technology we have now? For example, if you could have watched Nitro and things like that, how do you think your fandom would be different?
I think I would have just been even more immersed into it. My parents probably would have been like, okay, you need to watch something else as opposed to all this Nitro and all this Raw and all this other wrestling that you can find. I probably would have been even more engrossed in it. And I had a very, I shouldn't say I had, I do still have somewhat of an obsessive personality. So back then it was probably a little more out of control. But I feel like I would have just taken in as much as I possibly could, watch as much as I possibly could over and over and over. Used to watch some of the VHS tapes of wrestling over and over and over just because it brought me comfort. I just enjoyed watching it all the time.
So you talked about it bringing you comfort and stuff like that. Do you consider wrestling sort of your happy place, for lack of a better word?
I think so. I mean, anytime I'm by myself and I'm just like sitting on the couch eating a snack or eating dinner or something, I just throw on a random battle royal. I don't even care what year it is, what match it is. I'll just throw that on. It's like just watching chaos and wrestling, and it makes me happy.
I can fully understand where you're coming from there. So as we move on in your fandom, when you do get cable, how does that change your fandom?
Oh, I watch it way more. I was actually, it's funny because, everybody says the Attitude Era was such a big part of it, and I was watching mostly WCW at the time. I did occasionally switch over to the WWF, but I watched way more Nitro than I did Attitude Era Raw. So going back and trying to catch up with some of that stuff, having the network or Peacock or whatever people use nowadays, It's very nice to say, hey, I don't remember this because I didn't watch it when it was live. I was more focused on the Nitro side of things, which, yes, that means I watched a lot of WCW 2000. Unfortunately.
I'm saying nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have gone back and watched the Monday Night Raws. Not all of them. I have a bunch to go back through. But
That sounds like a series idea. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, I had talked at one point with my buddy Jeff about doing a Thunder watch along, just because I hadn't seen all the episodes of Thunder, and then I would like to see the show devolve into chaos. But that never came to fruition, probably for our sanity sake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was more WCW than WWE, surprisingly.
So being more of a WCW kid than a WWE kid, obviously you talked about the Attitude Era and everyone saying that with rose tinted glasses and stuff like that. What is something that maybe you've gone back and watched recently or since you've had the network that you go, nah, this hasn't aged well. I'm glad I wasn't then. And then what is something that you're like, oh, I've missed this and I wish I didn't?
So the things that haven't aged well are basically anything with the Divas from like the Attitude Era through the Ruthless Aggression Era. Anything with like, I think I watched like the Bikini Beach Blast Battle Royal one time. I was just like, you know, as someone who hadn't gotten laid, this is great. But as somebody who's like grown up and matured, it's like, this is kind of cringy. You know what I mean? It's like, and especially after seeing all the women's wrestlers are doing nowadays, and they are on par or sometimes even better than the men. You know, going back and watching that, it's like, wow, this could be a lot better. This is not as good as what we have now. So we appreciate what we had then to a certain extent, but now it's like, now we have very high expectations of the women's wrestlers. So that's pretty cool. As far as something that I do go back and enjoy, I've enjoyed the Ruthless Aggression era a lot because it's what I grew up through my teenage years through high school with. So I really fell in love with that time period. I know a lot of stuff from that time period because I was watching week in, week out as much as I possibly could. Even the weekend recap shows I was watching.
What, like the WWE Experience, for example?
Yeah, WWE Experience. That was the thing. Yeah, the Bottom Line, Jacked. What was the other one? Afterburn, I think, was another one.
Yeah.
All those I just continue to follow up with. Even the Bottom Line actually aired like midnight my time on a Saturday night. So I was just like sitting there. I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay up and watch this, even though I watched Raw the previous week. I'm going to just relive it right here. And I don't know why, but it was just a lot of fun to consume as much wrestling as I possibly could.
You talked about there being a Ruthless Aggression fan and stuff like that. Where is your current fandom before we get into your trivia side?
I would say my fandom is still relatively strong. I try to keep up with as much of it as I can. I do try and watch every episode of Dynamite. I don't get to watch Rampage or anything like that. I try and watch Raw and SmackDown. It doesn't always happen. But I do like to keep up with what's happening so that when a pay-per-view comes around, like Backlash or Money in the Bank or Night of Champions or whatever the case may be, that I can somewhat understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I can just enjoy the show. Unfortunately, it's not to a point where I can watch every single thing every single week. If I was a single man, maybe. But, you know, being married and just having a lot to do, I don't get to watch as much of it as I would like, which is fine because there's a lot out there. I feel like I would wake up, watch wrestling, go to bed, rinse.
You'd be on a scale, a hamster wheel, for lack of a better word.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no way to watch all of the wrestling that's ever happened without falling behind somewhere else. Just because, especially with Peacock and the network and whatever, there's just so much content that I haven't seen that I'm never going to be able to catch up with.
What is something that's not currently in your rotation that you're like, if I had time, I would check this out a bit more?
Original ECW. I was not a fan of it growing up. I never really got into it. And the first ECW, the original ECW pay-per-view I think I watched was about 3 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, I was never super into ECW just because growing up I was like, all this blood and stuff, and I heard like it gets nasty, and I was like, I was a little cringy back then. Not to say I'm not now, but I just wasn't into it. And now growing up is like, okay, I can take some of the stuff in ECW. There's one ECW match I absolutely refuse to watch.
What is it? Name and shame it.
Terry Funk and Sabu in the barbed wire match.
I've seen it, and I see where you're coming from.
You can understand it. There are very few things in wrestling that I absolutely refuse to watch. Is that the mass transit incident, also from ECW, and Sid breaking his leg. Absolutely refuse to watch it.
Fair. But what is something like maybe you're like that you watch on repeat, maybe that you're like that you will watch over and over again?
Battle Royals, Royal Rumbles. That's my thing. As chaotic as they are, and they're not the most technical of wrestling, but it's just the format. It almost feels like a game show type thing. Where it's set up like that. And I just love it. I've been fortunate enough to actually attend a Royal Rumble live. And that was a lot of fun.
Which
that
one?
particular
Out of personal curiosity.
2014.
Oh dear. Oh
yeah. If it would have been the year after, I would have been like, wow, that was the worst Royal Rumble I've ever seen in my life. Not the 2014s was much better. But just being there for a Rumble match, it was cool.
So you brought up game shows there, which is a lovely segue. How do you get involved in wrestling media, and how do you become the Trivia King?
So I started watching a lot of no DQ shows back in the day, and I ended up becoming friends with Jeff Meacham. And he had been doing that for years, and it got to a point, I think around 2015, Jeff and I started doing a show together. It never really took off. It was just something fun to do for us. And then he went back to No DQ, and he brought me into the fold. So I was able to start doing prediction shows with them, be on their weekly podcasts. And then Aaron Rift in 2017 decided he wanted to start a trivia show. I was like, pro wrestling trivia. I think I could do good at this. And I would think that now 2023 and having, I don't know if you can see it, that championship over there.
Yeah.
Might be
can you bring it closer on camera?
Yeah, I can do that. Having this particular championship for 5 years, I think I did pretty well in the wrestling trivia game.
So how does that championship come about then?
So, like I said, Aaron Riff started the show in 2017. I challenged Jeff Ford the first time and did not beat him. Challenged him the second time, beat him for the championship. It kind of started a little bit of a back and forth. And then in about 2018, I won it back. We kept doing the show. I just kept beating every single person in my path. And then in 2020, the show had gone on a little bit of a hiatus. And in 2020, a number of things happened. Obviously, the pandemic happened. I ended up losing my job shortly after the pandemic started. I was like, I really want to get the trivia thing going again. So we started filming episodes, cranking them out every single 2 weeks. We were cranking out another episode, just somebody else challenging me for the title. I was like, I have been champion for 2 years. Like, how long have I been champion? So I started a day counter. I was like, wait a second. If I hit this particular date, I will be champion for 1,000 days. Which now that we see Roman doing it, it's like 1,000 days is kind of unheard of. But then I just kept going. I was like, I really want to hit this. And I don't want to like skate by and just like not defend the title. It's like, I want to like earn
actually defend it, sort of thing.
Yeah. So we got there. I defended the title for the 1,000 days. It's like, that's awesome. And now we'll just have some tournaments to determine new challengers. And the 1,000-day celebration was awesome. Jeff surprised me with cameos from both Christopher Daniels and Kurt Angle, which that was really cool. That was really unexpected. But it was just such a cool thing. The trivia thing is such a cool thing. And I got to a point earlier this year where it's like, I've been champion for 5 years. I don't think I can do any more with this. So I ended up retiring the title. But it was a lot of fun while I did do it.
So you talked about retiring the title then. For people that may not know, what is the Greg Cherry Show?
So the Greg Cherry Show, as you can see there, my graphic, I started that also shortly after I lost my job during the pandemic. And the Greg Cherry Show was more for me to express my opinions, because I have always felt like I'm a very quiet individual off camera. I kind of keep to myself. So when I started the Greg Cherry Show, I was like, I have a lot of opinions about a lot of different things, not necessarily just wrestling. I talk about sports on there. I talk about, any goings on in the world, not necessarily political stuff, because I try to avoid that like the plague.
Yeah.
But I started that because I was like, I need a spot where my voice is heard, because I don't feel like that in my regular everyday life. Even sometimes like on the internet, on Twitter, it's like I have a platform, but like I don't feel like anybody pays attention to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah. So the Greg Cherry Show is kind of my outlet for like getting out everything.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit cathartic for me. I enjoy it. It's one of my favorite hours every week to do. And I've been doing that show for almost 3 years now. So I really enjoy the Greg Cherry Show. I felt like I was getting emotional talking about it because it's such a big part of what I do now. So
what do you think? You talked about getting emotional there.
Yeah.
What if, obviously it's your choice to end it because it's the Greg Cherry Show. If that came to an end, you think there'd be a bit of a void in your life?
It would really depend on what was coming next. I feel like I'm going to continue the Greg Cherry Show until there's something I can do to take the next step. I don't see me ending it just because it's like, I don't feel like doing it anymore, because it's really fulfilling for me. So if there was like another opportunity that came along, like we just saw Will Washington get a job with AEW.
Exactly. That was going to be my comparison.
Yeah. So if, not saying that I'm of the level of Will Washington, but if something like that were to come along, like if I got a job in TV media or something like that, I couldn't do the show anymore, then that would be probably how I would end it. Otherwise, I'd like to continue it and try and grow it bigger. The dream is McAfee level. That's going to take a lot of work to reach that.
What do you think makes the Greg Cherry Show? You talked about Pat McAfee and having his own sort of YouTube radio sort of show. What do you think makes the Greg Cherry Show different to all of the other shows that are out there?
Well, there are so many wrestling shows that just talk about the news and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, we see all the recap shows, we see all the just talking about wrestling shows, just the sit downs and stuff. When it comes to the Greg Cherry Show, and this has really evolved more in the last year or so, is that we love to interact with the audience. And we do a segment on our show, not really a segment, it's kind of throughout the show, where if somebody decides they want to donate to the show to see me do something stupid, we actually spin a wheel and I could either sing karaoke, I could do a wrestler's entrance. Mostly it's, hey, we're going to make you exercise and work out, you fat ass. And it was a couple weeks ago. It was last week, actually.
At time of recording, I'll say that because this will be in the can for a while.
Okay. Last week, I ended up doing the entrances of both Shawn Michaels and Velvet Sky.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you want to talk about range as far as entrances. There you go. But it's just, I feel like it's so different than anything else out there because anybody can grab a microphone and talk about wrestling and what happened that week. Anybody can grab a microphone and talk about what football did this week. But I like to entertain on top of that. So, like, if I can entertain you by being a goof and exercising and doing wrestlers' entrances, whatever tickles the fancy, I guess.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So you talked about some of your goals and stuff, and obviously you have the trivia side as well. Who do you want to go up against in trivia that you haven't yet? And who do you maybe want to get on the Greg Cherry Show to chat wrestling with?
I would love to have Sean Ross Sapp. Like he's been a goal since I've seen him on Quizlemania. A couple of Fightful people I would like to have on there. I've been trying to get Kate Elizabeth on there as well. She's another good one. Denise Salcedo is another one that I would love to have the opportunity to talk wrestling with. But I've also tried to expand who I talk to, not necessarily just in the wrestling media sphere. I have tried to reach out to celebrities to bring them on to my version of Quizlemania called Jack of All Trades. I almost at one point had Skylar Aston, who's done the Pitch Perfect movies, and he has a CBS show right now. I actually did go a little bit back and forth with the agent there, and unfortunately timing didn't work out, but that would have been pretty cool. I nearly got Kurt Angle on the show too, which that would have been a lot of fun. And that's one of the toughest parts for me. As much as I like doing this, coordinated guests for me has always been the hardest part. It is the hardest part. Yeah. Because it's either a timing issue or just I'm not well known enough to hey, yeah, come on the show or whatever the case may be. I feel like I'm doing something wrong that I don't get responses back or they just don't see them or maybe it sounds too product or something. I don't know what it is, but coordinated guests is always the biggest pain to get people on the show.
I'll put your mind at ease on that one because I've been there a few times. Sometimes it's just people are busy and you probably will get a DM maybe even in a year's time being like, I've only just seen this, I'm so sorry. I've had that loads of times. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, me too. I'm in the same boat. Some people don't see your messages for months after the fact. It's like, oh, okay. And that's understandable. If they don't see it, they don't see it. But I would rather, I've always said, I would rather get a straight up no than be ignored.
I know what you mean. So when it comes to, because you brought up Quizlemania there, how did the campaign start that you got yourself on Quizlemania then?
So the first couple episodes, I didn't even know Quizlemania was a thing. I had no idea that it was going on. And then somebody pointed out to me that in Quizlemania 3, Brian Zane actually name dropped me on the show, which, obviously me not watching and me not having done a show with Brian Zane in probably over a year at that point, it was pretty crazy to see. It was like, hey, this would be fun. This would be fun to get on there. And I didn't know how it works. I didn't know how you could get on the show. So I just started, messaging, be like, hey, yeah, I'd like to do this, and then never got back. And then I continued doing it. I was like, okay, I'm not hearing back, and I don't think they're going to have me on the show. And at that point, having been unemployed and frustrated and stuff, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to give up on this. I am going to keep hammering this point home until I get on the show. And so the first show of 2022, RJ City was supposed to be on the show, which he did end up being on the show, but he was running a little late when the show went live. And Sean actually went to bat for me, shouting the Greg Cherry for Quizlemania thing. And then several of the people on the show hashtagged it. I was like, we're getting it going. We're getting this thing moving. Finally, after 2 years, we're getting it moving. And then we just kept hammering the point home. And all while that was happening, I was doing their fan Quizlemania thing on their Patreon. Yeah. And I had won that like 7 or 8 times. And I actually, this might be a little inside baseball, but I got a message from Pete Quinnell that says, can you slow down winning this? Because people might be getting tired of you winning all the time. And I messaged him back, not thinking anything of it, saying, the only reason I'm doing this is because I want to get on Quizlemania. If I get on Quizlemania, I'll stop playing entirely. Next thing you know, I get booked for Quizlemania for the month after.
Wow.
Boom.
How did that then change your life, or what's the word I'm looking for? How did that change maybe your reputation or life within the wrestling media once you were on Quizlemania?
I think it got me a little bit of a boost in notoriety. I don't think it was like this grand, all of a sudden everybody's checking out my show, like I thought might possibly happen. But it was just such a cool thing because I had to keep that secret for 3 weeks and not tell it. Yeah, I found out 3 weeks before that I was going to be on the show, and I had to not tell a single soul till the graphic went up. And I feel like that was so worth it, seeing everybody's reactions to it. But it was such a cool thing, being like, I want to be on that show. I want to be on that show. And then you see the graphic with your picture on it. It's like, made it. I did it. It was a lot of fun. I know they're going back to like an in-studio version of Quizlemania that they do. So the odds of me going back are very low unless I physically go over there. But doing the show was such a blast.
That's really cool to hear. As we look at wrapping this up, Greg, because I do want to be respectful of your time, we're going to do a segment that I call Generic Questions. This is the segment where I ask my guests the questions they might be asked on social media, such as Greg's favorite match, favorite pay-per-view, favorite wrestler's team, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler. So what's your favorite match of all time, Greg?
Favorite match of all time? Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon at the 2001 King of the Ring. I love that match.
Why does that one speak to you?
Such a great story behind that one, because Kurt Angle was also competing in the King of the Ring tournament that night. So the story they told throughout that night of Shane actually helping him win his first match to make him wrestle an additional match, and then costing him the King of the Ring before the street fight was supposed to happen. Just the story, and it was a very smart move on Shane's part. And then the two of them just went out there for half an hour and beat the crap out of each other. It was just so incredible. I love that match to death. I watch it maybe once every couple of years just because I don't want to get over inundated with it, but I just love watching it.
What about your favorite pay-per-view of all time?
It's got to be the Royal Rumble. Are you talking specific pay-per-view?
Either a specific one, if you can.
Very specific pay-per-view. I'm going to go with one that I was at, WrestleMania 28.
Ooh.
That was a great show from top to bottom. Got to be witness to Hell in a Cell with Triple H and The Undertaker. Got to see The Rock and Cena for the first time. just a lot of fun memories.
There's a very underrated Punk Jericho match on that one as well.
Oh, the Punk Jericho match was fantastic.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
What about your favorite wrestler's theme of all time?
Favorite wrestlers, what?
Theme song.
Theme song. Ooh. I am a big wrestling theme nerd, so I just play through a lot of them. I don't know if I have a particular favorite of all time, just because I enjoy listening to so many. Wow. This is gonna sound weird. I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's one that I really enjoy listening to. And go with me on this.
Mm.
Eric Bischoff's WCW theme.
Ooh.
It was, I believe, a song from a movie, but I just enjoy listening to it. I think it's called White Train.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really enjoy that one. I kind of wish he would have brought it. I enjoy that one more than I enjoy his WWE theme, and I might be in the minority for that, but yeah, I'll go with that one.
Why do you like his WCW theme more than just out of curiosity?
It's catchy. I just think it's catchy and it's fun to listen to. And being more of a WCW guy than I was a WWE guy at the time, it's the theme I more associate with Eric Bischoff than I do his WWE theme.
And then who's your favorite tag team of all time?
Favorite tag team of all time? I'm going to go with Harlem Heat.
Ooh.
I really enjoyed Harlem Heat growing up. New Day would also be in that conversation because I really enjoy Kofi, Biggie, and Xavier. So yeah, between Harlem Heat and the New Day.
Right. When my guest gives me two answers to a question, we fantasy book on this show, Greg. Where you get to pick where that match is taking place between the New Day and Harlem Heat. Where's it taking place? What's it for? Who goes over?
I mean, you would figure it'd have to be a tag team championship match of some kind. I mean, New Day were the longest reigning tag team champions for a bit. Harlem Heat were 10-time WCW tag team champions. I would put that match at like a Starrcade. I don't know if I would have a main event, but I would have that match at a Starrcade. I might have Harlem Heat go over.
Are they heels at the time?
Yeah, it would have to be a babyface New Day and a heel Harlem Heat.
That would work. That'd be fun. And then, who is your favorite wrestler?
Shawn Michaels. That one is easy for me. I have a top 5, but Shawn Michaels has always been the number one.
Why is Shawn Michaels your favorite wrestler?
Again, growing up, I just enjoyed watching him. I was turning about 9-10 years old during his babyface turn when Psycho Sid turned on him. And just being involved in that time, watching him win the WWE Championship, such a cool thing.
And then as we wrap this up, Greg, obviously I want to say thank you for a great conversation. But the question that I end all my interviews on is with YouTube, with podcasting, with social media in general, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of very strange way. So what is one piece of content you want to be remembered for and one that you're like, yuck, if you could get rid of that, I would appreciate it?
A piece of content that I would love to live on is surprisingly nothing wrestling related.
Okay.
I have a game show called Luck of the Draw, which was my brainchild that I created all the way back when I was in college. And I just love the concept so much. It's basically a card game combined with like Nickelodeon style game shows. And I just enjoy that concept. I want to see it reach bigger heights. So I would say any episode of that I have. As far as something that I never want to see the light of day again, oh boy. I'm sure there's something I've done that's completely cringeworthy, and I cannot think of it right now. There's nothing at the top of my mind that I'm completely disappointed with. Maybe this last week's episode of the Greg Cherry Show, just because I had so many technical issues. But other than that, I'm pretty proud of everything that I've put out.
Fair enough. As we wrap this up, where can the good people find you and your content then, Greg?
You can find me on Twitter and on YouTube, on Instagram, basically all the social medias at Greg Cherry Brand, all one word. You can find me over on the Twitch channel, which basically just streams the Greg Cherry Show. Yeah, if you see at Greg Cherry Brand somewhere, that's more than likely me.
It's well worth doing, guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.